Hey, what's going on, everybody? Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker here. It's been a while since I've done sort of a camera announcement type video, kind of giving you my thoughts, breaking it down, what should you be doing. I think the last time I did it was the Panasonic GH6, and that was just a teaser. And I believe actually we're supposed to know more about that this coming week in like 2 days. So that's going to be exciting. And we'll talk about that when that video drops. But today we're actually going to be talking about the Sony A7 IV. Don't get excited. This is the A7S III. I don't have a pre-production model, although I would love to, but I know I'm not that kind of creator that gets that kind of treatment. So don't worry about that. The major question that I want to talk about with you guys in terms of, what should you do? Should you upgrade from the original A7 III? If you're like me and you have an A7S III, should you just sell that off because it's still kind of sold out? People are still wanting it. You can get a premium, basically get your money back, buy this A7 IV and make some money. Or, I was always going to sell this off after I was done with Rumble TV. So now the question for me is, should I sell my A7S III, get 2 A7 IVs, and call it a day? Let's find out. All right, guys, so I've watched more or less quite a few of the pre-production reviews, and I'm not going to talk about every possible features that's in this camera that's new. I'm going to talk about the ones I feel is most notable for what I do, which is narrative filmmaking and YouTube, obviously. But I'm also going to try to talk about it in other terms, like documentary, corporate, video. I'm going to talk about the features that I believe is very interesting, and then of course lining up with whether or not you should upgrade or sell and buy. So let's talk about the major thing that I was not expecting, which is Sony gave you basically all of the codecs that come in the newer Sony A7S III. And not only that, I kind of theorized that Sony would say, yes, we'll give you 10-bit in the new A7 IV, but it's going to be 10-bit 420 because if you really want the good stuff, you should get the Sony A7S III for 10-bit 422. That is not the case. We do have full 10-bit 422, but not only that, it's not just the regular compressed XAVC S codec. We actually have the HS version, which came in at the Sony A7S III, and that is the H.265. So you have smaller file sizes and a whole lot of quality. It's actually been a lot of fun shooting in this codec. And then you have the All-I version, and all of this is capable up to 60p. That was something I wasn't expecting. So good on Sony for giving us options. Now, the one major thing though is the 4K 60 is cropped in because this is a new sensor at 33 megapixels instead of 24. If they kept it at the 24, there might be a possibility that the new processor could give us full frame 4K 60, but we are getting a lot more data, super sampled, and therefore you are capped at Super 35 for 4K 60. Does that matter to me though? Absolutely not. For a narrative filmmaking and YouTube, narrative filmmaking, if I'm going to be shooting a 60p sequence, it's because it's a very specific reason, and in which case I will have already understood which lenses I need because of that Super 35. But if you are doing documentary, live events, weddings, where you are on the go right there, you have one chance to get it, this could be a major problem for you, obviously. In which case I would say this camera probably isn't for you if that's how you shoot. You're probably going to want to go to the Sony A7S III to get that full frame 60p as well as 120p. Now, because this is a new 33 megapixel sensor, we do have rolling shutter, as DP review Jordan Drake shows. Is this a major problem though? Obviously it depends on the creator, but for me personally, doing narrative films, it is not a big deal for me. It's only a big deal if I have the original A7S that had really bad rolling shutter and you had really jittery hands at a telephoto level, you'll definitely see that wiggle. But for the most part, think about this in a movie perspective, narrative films. If I show you a guy talking, yep, and he says, "What do you think?" and the camera whips over, your brain has processed, this guy asked a question to someone over there. What is this person? Who is this person? What is his face doing? And what does he think? Your brain does not process, ooh, that image is a little skewed. So, I mean, that's what we do as artists, as storytellers, is most people don't see the things that we see on a technical level, because that's not what we're doing. We're directing them where to look. So when it comes to that, rolling shutter, in Rumble TV with the A7 III, I whipped around so many times because of the fight scenes and how we were stylized to shoot it. And do you see the rolling shutter? No. You're looking at the fist going at someone's face. You're looking at someone getting tossed to the ground. So all to say is, for me personally and in general, rolling shutter is probably not a big deal, and it's only a big deal in certain scenes or certain types of shots. Like you're in a car looking at the mountain and there's a bunch of trees flying by and then you see that skew. That could be a thing. But otherwise, I think for the normal person, they don't see that. They're looking at the mountain that you're pointing at. Some other features inside the camera, we do see some updated face eye detection that is very similar to the A7S III series, so that is always welcomed. We also do have something called focus breathing compensation, which is really interesting, and I really applaud Sony for thinking about that, because I do believe that the major criticism on their G Master series lenses is that some of them do focus breathe quite a bit. For cinema, this could be a problem. For photographers, maybe a little bit of a problem, maybe not as much, but for videographers, it can be a big problem. So basically, they're doing a digital crop of some sort with all the megapixels they have to compensate that. But it only works for specific lenses in the Sony lineup, and I'm sure eventually all of Sony's lenses will be on there, hopefully. But that doesn't really mean much to me because I don't actually own any Sony lenses. I have the Tamrons, and then I have the Viltrox lenses. Now the Tamrons might be okay because I think Sony has some sort of agreement, or Tamron's like now a sister company, something like that. There is something going on there. But will Viltrox ever get that treatment? Probably not. Gonna not hold my breath on that one. Just kind of like I'm not gonna be holding my breath that Sony will ever allow Blackmagic's video assist recording feature to give us B-RAW out of the Sony A7S III. I just don't think Sony will let that happen. Like, Sony is kind of like Canon in certain ways, but honestly, each camera manufacturer has their own little quirks, and that's how they keep making us buy cameras, because, yeah, no one's going to actually give us the camera we want. So, anyways, moving on. Now let's also talk about the ISO performance, because if there's one thing we've always heard from the original A7S is that, hey, it's a full frame sensor, less megapixels, and therefore it can gather more light and also have much better color fidelity. To a certain degree, it's true, but I do believe that DP Review did a video that was actually very educational. I will link that up there, where Chris Nichols and Jordan Drake talked about, yes, it does help, but that's not the full story. A higher megapixel camera can easily also be as good in low light. So with that being said, if we look at Potato Jet's video here, where he was comparing, well, how do they compare at these various higher ISO levels? Now, their dual ISO is in different areas, but when it comes down to it, they both can give a very clean signal. You literally have to go at 400% just a pixel peep to see the noise dancing around there. And so when I'm looking at this camera for my own consideration, for me, all I'm saying is it's clean past 3200. I don't really go past 3200 or 6400 ISO because things are being lit on a set. And even if it wasn't, having a 1.8 lens from Viltrox or even a 2.8, you're still able to get exposure. So for me, the ISO argument is not very relative to me anymore, because I'm saying, hey, Sony, even since the A7 III, its high ISO performance was actually rivaling the A7S II, which was supposedly the camera for low light, for sensitivity, is what they said. But now Sony said it's for superiority, something like that. Anyways, when it comes to Sony cameras, and I think essentially Panasonic cameras, low light at higher ISOs is pretty darn good. In like normal filming, even narrative filming situations. So I don't really think it's a thing to kind of argue about anymore. So between these two cameras, for all intents and purposes, they basically perform the same. The last thing I want to talk about is actually the webcam functionality, because up until this point, you had to download Sony's own software that allows the computer to actually see your camera as a webcam. Now, I do have the Apple Silicon M1 chip, and up until now, Sony just has not updated their app to allow me to use my A7S III as a webcam. So hopefully Sony is actually just thinking about, maybe we're just going to roll out a firmware update for all the cameras in the recent years to allow this feature to happen. I hope so, because as of right now, I'm really curious why Sony still hasn't updated their software for the Apple Silicon. Very annoying. So here comes the million-dollar question. Who is this camera for? And if you are already in the Sony camp, should you upgrade? Should you sell off your A7S III? So let's actually break this down here. If you have the original A7 III, I do believe this is a worthy update in a big way, because you now have a lot of video features that this one did not have. You also just have more megapixels to work with, and it seems like its picture processing engine is doing quite a good job. And it's basically a really, really good hybrid camera. Like, you can do a lot with this one camera, similar to what the GH5 did. It was very capable in video, and it was very capable in photos. You could do literally everything in a micro four thirds sensor. In this case, you can do pretty much everything with a full frame sensor. So now here comes the bigger question. The A7 IV versus the A7S III. Should you sell off your more expensive camera that people are still trying to get so you can get as much money as possible and make some money and get a pretty capable camera? I already said this before, if you're a wedding photographer or videographer and you're doing live events where you have one shot at it and 60p is something you constantly do, this camera is probably not for you. Go ahead and get the A7S III. But narrative filmmakers, what should you do? For me specifically, it does make a lot of sense for me to just sell off the A7S III, save some cash, and get the A7 IV. Because I have 10-bit 422 now, that's not a problem. We do have like the S-Log, the S-Cine tone. I have all the same codecs as this camera. I can shoot in 24p, which I do. I can shoot in 30p, which I do. And I can shoot in 60p for those very specific moments if I want to slow it down. Do I need the 120p? Not really, not for what I do. I've literally only used it once for one sequence in Rumble TV. So when it comes down to it, it's like, it almost doesn't make much sense for me to hold on to the A7S III. But what I'm probably actually going to do is I'm going to probably get the A7 IV at some point, run these cameras together for a while, and then if I really find myself never needing the full capabilities of the A7S III, then I'll probably sell that off and get me a used A7 IV and, go from there. And the reason I'm saying this is because I actually had a corporate shoot that I did about 2 weeks ago. I brought both cameras, A7 III, A7S III. Which camera did I end up using the most on that corporate shoot where I was shooting B-rolls for the video team? I actually ended up using the A7 III the most, and specifically it's because I'm there with my one lens, a zoom lens, and I'm just like, crap, I need to go in a little bit more, but I shouldn't be crossing paths in certain ways. So I hit the crop mode button, get into Super 35, and get the same shot from where I'm standing. That was invaluable to me. And I would say that even on a narrative film set, you kind of want that ability as well, because sometimes you might not have that lens, or maybe another person is using the more telephoto lens and you are stuck with this lens, in which case you pop into Super 35 in full 4K and you're good to go. So that's where I'm leaning, is that the A7 IV makes the most sense for me. The A7S III is a great camera, but it doesn't make sense for me specifically because if I'm only shooting at 24 and 30p most of the time using 10-bit codecs, then I'm not using the full capabilities of the camera, and therefore I should probably just get rid of it. But here's the thing though, we don't know. Sony might randomly suddenly say, yeah, Blackmagic, you can do your be raw on our cameras, in which case that would be awesome because I would love to use those in very specific situations where I do need that extra flexibility of trying to pull certain things back. But otherwise, for the most part, it makes total sense just to go over to the A7 IV. And hey, that is it for this video, everybody. And there's probably going to be another one coming out for a couple other things that I've been interested in terms of tech for video. And the GH6 is supposed to be announced here real soon. Probably an announcement, not a development announcement. So we'll see if they give us that one bloody feature that will make their camera literally be the one to beat: autofocus. Yeah, we'll see if they do it, because if they do it on the GH6, then chances are it's going to be in the S2 and the S2H, which is going to make a lot of full-frame people very happy. Or the S5 Mark II. Forgot about that one. So anyways, if you guys have any comments, let's actually have some conversations. Are you excited about the Sony A7 IV? Are you thinking about it? And let's just have fun down in the comment section. So go ahead down below and I will join you there when I can. Other than that, we'll see you in the next video. See ya.